we live in a very sensitive planet. People talk a lot about the rivers, the forests, and the atmosphere for global warming. My focus is on the ocean. The oceans are a much neglected area connected with climate change, and the purpose of this presentation is to cover some of that area. James Lovelock talks about the Gaia theory. The Gaia is the interaction between the inorganic and the organic elements of the Earth system. That for centuries have kept that system level and constant. It's now, because of the increase in CO2, which was supposed to be shown on this slide. It missed the translation. But in essence, if we carry on business as usual, we will hit 6 degrees. And that really is warm. We need to get on a trajectory, on a pathway down to 2 degrees, less than 2 degrees. What I'm depicting here, and I'm sure a lot of you know about it, is the greenhouse effect, where the energy coming in from the sun is absorbed by the Earth. Part of it goes out as infrared radiation, and part of it is captured by the greenhouse gas and returned back to the Earth. Now, where is all that energy stored? All that energy is stored not in the atmosphere, it's stored in the upper level of the tropical ocean zone. That energy has been accumulating for many, many decades, and it is that energy which drives the weather, it drives extreme weather events, it transports heat to the atmosphere, and the result, and also to the ocean. What this does, it shows what's called the oligotrophic zones, the ocean deserts, and those are increasing at a rate of 2 to 4% per year. And that's effectively lost productivity. People talk about the lost productivity of the deforestation, but losing the same productivity in the ocean is dire. The UK is leading in the area of science of geoengineering, where these different techniques for changing the climate, trying to stabilise the climate, are being judged for how expensive they are and how effective they are. And the Royal Society did this review. The prime candidate for a lot of political capital and economic capital is called carbon capture and store. That's a really, really difficult technology, but a huge amount of effort is going into it, and a lot of people think that effort is going to take too long and be too expensive. Other things they're trying: deforestation, reforesting, biochar, air carbon capture. These are all techniques which really are too slow. Getting reforestation takes many, many decades, and even then it's not a reliable way of mitigating the climate. It helps to look at where all that carbon is coming from. The vast majority of carbon is stored in the ocean, and the flux between the ocean and the atmosphere is much greater than the flux coming out from anthropogenic, from man-made sources. So our technology looks at this area here, it looks at this exchange, and it primarily looks at this carbon that's coming out of the ocean up in the equatorial region. In the equatorial region, the carbon comes out, it goes into the atmosphere at high cold latitudes, right? The UK, it's absorbed into the cold water, and that's a continual cycle. And we look to intercept that emission of carbon before it comes out into the ocean. And you can see here on this graph, these are the very high areas of intense carbon emission, natural carbon emission. If we can reduce that, it has exactly the same effect as reducing the carbon dioxide from a chimney. So these are the areas that we're looking at. You can see these are areas where that carbon is being reabsorbed. Coincident with that high emission of natural emission of carbon, it's this very high solar energy intensity. So we're coupling, or we're proposing to couple that stranded energy, that energy which is warming up the planet. We're trying to harness that energy to put the carbon back into geological storage where it came from, as we pull out coal, as we pull out oil. And that's how we intend to do it. We tend to intercept at depth that carbon before it emits, and using the solar energy to do that. It's not a technique which is being talked about much. People don't talk about going to the oceans very much, but it's a far, far, far effective, more effective, decouples energy from emission. And effectively what we're doing is we're taking the sunshine, we're taking the seawater, we're extracting the CO2, we're putting it into geological storage and setting that as a carbon offset product. There's supposed to be another graph down here which shows where we're going to do it. But the other alternative, as we develop this technology, instead of just going from simple carbon storage, we can actually recycle that carbon into a new generation of hydrocarbon fuel. So you can carry on flying your airplanes, you can carry on driving your cars because you're recycling the same carbon. Decoupling carbon emissions from power generation is a big thing. Because this exists in the tropical zones, this can share. We can share this deployment with emerging states, island states, coastal states that are themselves suffering from climate change and are going to be the worst hit by climate change. They can generate income by selling the offsets that are generated in their exclusive economic zone. We're looking to initially start with one country and then spread it to a number of other developing countries as partners with the UK. And then, as we're successful, we can expand to other developing countries, and then countries like the US, China, Japan, they can also come in and participate. There's a big price to pay for climate change, and there's a graph here that was going to tell you exactly how. Not only is it expensive in terms of the economics of it, it's also very expensive in terms of the extreme weather events which we're seeing in Europe today, we saw in America. Now, in my generation, in my time, we are going to be hit by climate change. In your generation, or the generation of most of you, that damage is going to be severe. I shudder to think, unless we get back on the pathway of 2 degrees, what it's going to be like for your children. Thank you very much.